did have the money, and they had been actually cleared to be a member. We just had not inducted them formally.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, and we haven't completed this because we're waiting for, direction. None of us are speaking for our national bodies, but we're waiting for a clearance to either induct them virtually or to wait for, further instructions. But what I think is another issue, Mike, and that is we're talking about this virtual induction, and I'm opposed to Brother Phillips because what I think is the fraternity sororities around the country are being threatened by the undergraduates and what they're doing in terms of handling these intakes on campus. And we all been sued, and we all realize that if a really big suit hits us, that it could wipe out our fraternity or sorority. And there are plenty of cases on the books that, our situation may be in peril right now. However, what I was thinking, or what I've been thinking about, is if inductions were virtual and we had the inductions on a Zoom where undergraduates and graduates, the alumni, were on the same virtual meetings, and we made sure that the pledges had the information and they did all the things that we do. However, we are supervising it with hands-on. We're right in the room. So we could almost eliminate, or very close to eliminate, all of this foolishness that these kids are doing that puts all of us in jeopardy.
Sure.
And we were just talking last night. Brother Phillips, the Kappas are also doing, we call it happy hour. And we get together, we Zoom in, and we have our drinks, and we talk about issues. And one of the things that we were talking about is the rising cost of insurance, because another aspect of this is if there's a large lawsuit, what if the insurance company says, you know what, this is too high risk because you all have demonstrated you cannot control these kids on the college campus, so we're not going to insure you anymore. So what does that do to us? So we may be forced into this virtual intake situation in lieu of insurance. Because if we can't insure these kids on campus, there's no way we're going to let ourselves be liable for their actions. And we shouldn't. So this may be a way to handle the inductions without, the foolishness, chicanery, whatever, that many of us went through and realized that day is gone, and physical laying of hands on these kids is no longer acceptable. So that's another way to look at it.
I think that the doctor has pointed out eloquently some of the issues associated with and why we have problems, current problems with intake, is that there is a desire on the part of members to build a brotherhood through the process, build a camaraderie through the process, and also go through a rite of passage. There's something about that rite of passage, having the change from being one thing into something else, and having walked through the fire in a sense. And when we remove that, I think that's an issue that a lot of brothers have. What are we left with if we don't have a way to build that camaraderie, that brotherhood, that sisterhood, and we don't have a true rite of passage? Then what do we have? Last week, or actually it's a couple of weeks ago, I became an ambassador for Maker's Mark, the bourbon. And you know how I became an ambassador? I went to the website, I took a little test. After reading their information, I took a test. They said, you passed. Now you're an ambassador. And if that's what Alpha Phi Alpha is going to become, where you sign up, and you go online, you take a test, and then you become a member, that will be the death of this fraternity. That will be the death of Kappas. That will be the death of Delta Sigma Theta and all of the other Divine Nine organizations, in my opinion.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
How is this any different from what we do at the graduate level? They don't do anything. We don't take them out at night and run them through a river. We don't do anything.
Well, now be careful there, Doc, because I certainly am not suggesting that anything be done outside of the IMDP process that we are taught. And so I'm not suggesting anybody go out and run through the river and that there be laying on of hands. This organization, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, does not sanction, will not tolerate any hazing of any sort. So I'm certainly not suggesting that. What I am suggesting is that through the current process, there is something of a building of the camaraderie between the members of the intake class, that they get together, they have projects they have to work on, that they interact with the current brotherhood, that and that there is something of a rite of passage that they go through. It's not, there are a lot of brothers, and this is what I was saying, is what your remarks, there are a lot of brothers who don't think it's enough, and that's why we get into trouble, because they begin to add and add and add to give that, to strengthen that process, embolden it, enliven it, to a greater extent than we have now. And so what I'm saying is, I think if you remove it all together and just put it virtually online, and essentially what you then have is, we're a club that you go sign up for, I think it really begins to change the dynamic of the organization, and we lose something of what it was that we were supposed to be. This group says that we are for the building of better men. That means that men have to be one thing, come through our process, and be something else at the end of it. And I don't think you get that through just taking a test online.
Well,
no, I couldn't agree more.
That's an interesting perspective. And I can tell you that personally, the way I was taken through the process you're talking about was brutal and inhumane. And so I guess maybe that's why I have a brand on my chest, because I felt so intense about having made it through that process. But I think today, sir, that that kind of ritual is no longer going to be tolerated. You said that Alpha doesn't tolerate that. Well, I think you're being sued about 6 or 7 places around the country because the kids are still doing it. And what I'm saying is, we may have to change our approach, or none of us will be in existence. That's my point. Now, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm saying we may have gone into another era where that behavior is no longer tolerated.
Well, I want to say very quickly, because I know that President Marintek wants to get in. I just want to make it clear that those people being sued are being sued because they went outside of Alpha Phi Alpha parameters. They're not being sued because they did what they were supposed to be doing through the IMDP process.
Okay. And I concur on that. I think that all of us have a process that builds camaraderie, for us, sisterhood, relationships and rapport. And that's just the program as it's prescribed. All of that other stuff is clearly a violation of processes and procedures. And just to kind of bring it back to the topic, I don't think that we can even build all of those relationships and such via these virtual chats and fellowshipping sessions. Like, we're doing those things regionally and locally and nationally right now, having Zoom birthdays and Zoom this and Go webinar that. But I don't think that it can build the same fellowship and the same camaraderie. You have enough problems just building sisterhood, seeing each other face to face, going through membership intake. I couldn't imagine trying to even start that process via electronic or virtually.
Well, see, if you think about it, you wouldn't have thought about us doing this a couple years ago, having a virtual meeting all the way around the country like this. I think that where we're headed is different. It's going to be different. There's going to be a new normal. So, and I may be wrong. And like I said, I play as old style. So I definitely understand what it means when I went across the burning sands. But what I'm saying is, I think, and I could be wrong, but we may have to come up with a new normal, because the things that we've done in the past, I mean, sure, every fraternity, every sorority has the rules. And if we were abiding by the rules, we wouldn't each be facing several multi-million-dollar lawsuits where children have been lost. So, I mean, every single fraternity and sorority can make that claim. And I'm just saying, I don't think we're going to be able to survive if these things continue. We may not be able to survive what's already happened, but certainly the insurance companies and the powers that be, the universities, et cetera, are getting a little tired of having to face, these terrible things that we're doing to each other, trying to, like Brother Philip said, this rite of passage, sometimes. And Brother Mike will tell you that sometimes the graduate people are involved. So I've heard the conversations from my graduate brothers who pledged old school, and they're trying to separate, the old school coming over and the graduate brothers, like they're two different kinds of Kappas. And we keep trying to tell them there's no, there's only one Kappa, but, they're from that old school. And I'm just thinking we may need to be looking forward in terms of how we do things in the future. And I may be wrong, but that's just my thought.
Well, I would certainly say we're definitely building a blueprint right now for this pandemic across all of our organizations. We're definitely doing things we haven't done before. I'm pretty sure that a lot of organizations are having their conferences and conventions and such electronically over the summer or whenever they were supposed to have taken place. And so I'm sure we're doing a lot of things that we have never done before. So I certainly say that we are the group right now that is building the blueprint for what's to come in the future. Absolutely.
And I would agree. I think that there is a looking forward and trying to figure this out. And I think that my other Alpha brothers here can testify that the intake process has been changing over the years as we try to seek the balance. And I certainly think that with the new technology and things, we're going to see some new ideas come forward. I would just say again that I think that a virtual intake is really not going to be the answer, I don't think. And once it's suggested, I think it will be roundly rejected by the brotherhood, and all of the sisterhood will outright reject it. But that's not to say that there aren't some things that perhaps we're discovering now that we will be using a lot in the future. I think that we should be buying stock in Zoom and these other virtual platforms, because I think we're going to use them. Be using them quite a bit for meetings and ways to bring people in. But what I wanted to jump to something else and say that maybe what the organization should be thinking about, and I know that all of the organizations have this at some point talk about recapturing lost members, and perhaps the virtual world might be an avenue to bring people back into the fold. If what we're talking about is how do we keep the membership numbers up, how do we get money coming in if we can't be on college campuses and doing in-person intake, then maybe this is an avenue to bring people back to the fold.
Yeah, that's the thing about what's happening now. This conversation that this new normal is generating. This is what we're really trying to get. Like, how do the organizations that are boast such large numbers and have been around for more than a century, how do you continue in this new normal if you can't get to one another? How do you the basic question is, can you create brotherhood and sisterhood virtually? And that's what you all were speaking to, and that's kind of where we've got to You know,